Lieutenant Alara Drake stood in the loading bay of the Earth Alliance diplomatic vessel, Concordia, staring at the mission brief in her hand with growing suspicion. The entire document consisted of 2 sentences. Represent Earth at the Galivarian ceremonial gathering. Do not allow yourself to be undermined. She looked up at the communications officer who had delivered the message. This can't be right. Where's the rest of it? The young ensign shrugged. That's all command sent through. Lieutenant. Admiral Reeves said you'd know what to do. Alara suppressed a groan. Admiral Reeves and his cryptic orders. The man seemed to believe that soldiers should be mind readers. After 15 years of service in Earth's Special Tactical Response Unit, she'd grown accustomed to vague directives, but this was sparse even by military standards. When do I leave? She asked, already mentally cataloging her equipment. Immediately. The transport leaves in 30 minutes. Alara nodded. Very well. Dismissed. As the ensign left, she opened her personal terminal and quickly searched for information on Galivaris. The screen displayed basic data. An M-class planet with a gravity 1.2 times that of Earth. Breathable atmosphere. Home to a humanoid species with an elaborate monarchy-based social structure. They had joined the Galactic Alliance 80 years ago, but maintained a reputation for isolationism and rigid adherence to tradition. What caught her attention was the security threat assessment. Medium-high. That was unusual for a diplomatic event. Her mind made up. Alara headed to the armory. If she was representing Earth in a potentially hostile environment, she'd do so properly equipped. The mission brief might be lacking, but her preparation wouldn't be. The quartermaster raised an eyebrow when she requested her full, strategic combat armor. Going to war, Lieutenant? Just being thorough, she replied, signing the authorization form. The brief mentions a ceremonial gathering on Galivaris, but it also contains a security warning. Galivaris, the quartermaster whistled. Those folks are all about protocol and tradition. You sure armor is the right choice for a diplomatic function? Alara shrugged. The orders say to represent Earth and not be undermined. Nothing represents Earth better than our military capability. The man chuckled and handed over the access card to her equipment locker. It's your call, but don't come crying to me when the diplomats have a fit. 30 minutes later, Alara stood in the transport shuttle fully encased in her strategic combat armor, an intimidating exoskeleton of reinforced composite plating powered by a miniature fusion core. The midnight blue armor gleamed under the bay lights, Earth Alliance insignia emblazoned on her chest and shoulders. The helmet's sophisticated heads-up display ran through diagnostics, confirming all systems operational. The armor wasn't just for show. It enhanced her strength 5-fold, contained environmental protection systems, tactical analysis software, and enough firepower to hold off a small army. The weapon systems were currently in standby mode. She wasn't completely tactless, but they could be activated in milliseconds if needed. As the shuttle prepared for departure, a harried-looking man in diplomatic attire rushed into the bay, datapad in hand. He stopped short at the sight of Alara. Lieutenant Drake, I'm Attaché Williams from the Diplomatic Corps. I was sent to brief you on... His words died as he took in her battle-ready appearance. What in heaven's name are you wearing? Strategic combat armor, standard issue for high-risk missions, Alara replied calmly. This isn't a high-risk mission. This is a royal wedding ceremony. Alara felt her stomach drop. A what? A wedding. Crown Prince Carrion of the Galivarian Royal House is marrying Princess Aurela of the Stellaris Confederation. It's a crucial alliance-building event. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. You're supposed to be the Earth's ceremonial representative. Alara's mind raced. My orders mentioned nothing about a wedding. They simply stated I was to represent Earth at a ceremonial gathering. Williams scrolled through his datapad frantically. There must be some mistake. We requested a cultural attaché, not a soldier, Alara supplied. Precisely. He looked at his watch and grimaced. There's no time to change plans. The ceremony begins in 4 hours, and the journey takes 3. You'll have to make do. Can I at least change out of the armor? Not if we want to arrive on time. The shuttle is prepped for immediate departure. Williams sighed heavily. Just try not to look too intimidating. Alara bit back a retort as they boarded the shuttle. How exactly was she supposed to make full combat armor look non-intimidating? As the craft lifted off, she opened a private channel to her commanding officer, but received only an automated response. Admiral Reeves is currently unavailable. Your message has been logged. Of course he was unavailable. This had his fingerprints all over it. During the journey, Williams attempted to brief her on Galivarian customs and protocols. But it was clear he was as blindsided by her assignment as she was. He kept glancing nervously at her armor, as if expecting it to spontaneously open fire. The Galivarians place enormous importance on symbolism, he explained. Every gesture, every color, every word has significance. They'll interpret your presence and your attire as a deliberate statement from Earth. And what statement will combat armor make? Alara asked dryly. Williams winced. That's what I'm afraid to find out. As the shuttle began its descent through Galaveris's atmosphere, Alara gazed out at the landscape below. The planet's surface was dominated by sprawling crystal formations that refracted sunlight in dazzling patterns. Among these natural wonders stood the capital city, a breathtaking fusion of crystalline architecture and advanced technology. The shuttle landed on a designated platform, adjacent to what appeared to be a massive cathedral, constructed entirely of iridescent crystal. A welcoming party stood waiting, a group of tall, slender beings with silvery skin and elaborate ceremonial attire. Remember, Williams whispered as the shuttle doors opened, bow from the waist, speak only when addressed, and try not to make any sudden movements. Alara nodded, mentally preparing herself for what would surely be an awkward diplomatic incident. She'd faced down enemy fire on a dozen worlds. But somehow, this felt more daunting. As she stepped onto the platform, her armor's systems automatically adjusted to the planet's gravity. The waiting Galivarians stared at her with expressions that ranged from shock to fascination. One of them, a tall figure wearing what appeared to be ceremonial robes of state, stepped forward. "Welcome, Earth representative," he said in flawless English. "I am High Chancellor Therivol. His voice faltered as he took in her full appearance. "We did not expect such formality in your presentation." Williams stepped in quickly. "High Chancellor, may I present Lieutenant Alara Drake of Earth's Special Tactical Response Unit. There appears to have been a miscommunication regarding the nature of today's ceremony." Therivol's expression shifted to one of intrigue. "Lieutenant Drake? The same Lieutenant Drake who led the rescue operation on Centauri Prime 3 years ago?" Alara blinked in surprise. "Yes, that was my unit, sir." A murmur ran through the assembled Galivarians. Therivol turned and spoke rapidly in his native language to an aide, who hurried away toward the cathedral. "This is most unexpected," Therivol said, turning back to Alara. "But perhaps it is the will of the ancestors. Please, follow me." As they walked toward the crystal structure, Williams leaned close to Alara. "What's happening? What was that about Centauri Prime?" "Classified operation," she replied quietly. "Hostage extraction in a mining colony. I can't discuss details." "Was Prince Carrion involved?" "I don't know. We rescued 17 individuals. Their identities were confidential." They entered the cathedral through towering doors that seemed to be made of a single piece of translucent crystal. Inside, the space opened into a vast chamber where hundreds of beings from various species were already gathered. Sunlight filtered through the crystalline walls, creating ever-shifting patterns on the floor. The aide who had hurried ahead returned with another Galivarian, this one adorned in even more elaborate ceremonial garb. He approached their group with an expression of wonder. "Lieutenant Drake," he said, his voice carrying throughout the chamber. "I am Royal Chamberlain Vexer. Is it true that you led the team that intervened on Centauri Prime during the terrorist occupation?" All eyes in the chamber turned toward them. Alara maintained her military bearing as she responded. "I did, sir. It was a standard extraction operation." The Chamberlain turned to address the gathering. "Honored guests, the ancestors have blessed us this day. The human before you is the very warrior who saved our prince's life 3 years ago, when he was traveling incognito as part of his preparation for leadership." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Alara fought to keep her expression neutral, despite her shock. One of the hostages had been the Gallivarian prince? That detail had certainly been kept from her team. "According to our most sacred traditions," the Chamberlain continued, "one who saves the life of royal blood becomes Kavithnar, sacred life bond protector. That Lieutenant Drake arrives armored for battle on this day of union can only be interpreted as the ancestors' blessing on this marriage." Williams looked like he might faint. "Lieutenant," he whispered urgently, "do you have any idea what this means?" Before Alara could respond, the Chamberlain approached and bowed deeply. "You must take your place in the ceremony immediately. The prince has requested it personally." "My place?" Alara asked, suddenly wary. "What exactly would that entail?" "You will stand as the shield of honor, the symbolic protector of the Union. It is one of our most revered positions." Williams gripped Alara's armored forearm. "This is unprecedented. Earth hasn't been granted this level of ceremonial importance in any Galactic Alliance event before." The Chamberlain nodded enthusiastically. "Indeed, it is a great honor for your planet." Alara weighed her options quickly. Her orders had been to represent Earth and not allow herself to be undermined. Being elevated to a position of ceremonial importance certainly fulfilled those criteria, even if she was woefully underprepared. "I would be honored to serve as Shield of Honor," she said formally. The Chamberlain clapped his hands together. "Excellent, come! There is little time. The ceremony begins soon." As they followed him deeper into the cathedral, Williams whispered, "This is either a diplomatic miracle or a disaster waiting to happen." "Let's hope for the former," Alara replied, though her combat instincts were already scanning for potential threats. Her armor's sensors were picking up hundreds of life forms, various energy signatures, and complex security systems throughout the structure. They were led to a small antechamber, where several Gallivarians waited with ceremonial items. The Chamberlain explained that as Shield of Honor, Alara would carry a symbolic crystal blade and stand at the right hand of Prince Carrion throughout the ceremony. "The blade represents your willingness to defend the Union," he explained, presenting an impressive sword carved from a single crystal. "Though in your case," he added with a glance at her armor, "the symbolism is rather more literal than usual." Alara accepted the crystal blade, which her armor systems immediately identified as ceremonial rather than functional. Still, it was beautifully crafted, appearing to glow from within. As the Gallivarians bustled around making final preparations, a tall figure entered the antechamber. Unlike the others, his silvery skin bore intricate markings that seemed to shimmer with their own light. He wore ceremonial armor that, while obviously designed for appearance rather than function, echoed military styling. "Lieutenant Drake," he said, approaching with a warm smile. "I am Prince Carrion. It gives me great pleasure to see you again, though under far more pleasant circumstances." Alara bowed formally. "Your Highness, I must admit I wasn't aware we had met before." "Few knew my identity during that unfortunate incident," he replied. "I was traveling as a diplomatic aide to study other cultures firsthand. When the terrorists took control of the facility, your team's response was most impressive." "We were just doing our job, sir." "With exceptional skill and honor," he countered. "I never forgot how you negotiated for the release of the local workers before extracting the off-world visitors. You valued all lives equally. Alara remembered the operation well. It had been a challenging situation with limited resources and multiple hostages. Standard protocol would have prioritized extracting the Alliance citizens first. But she'd made the call to ensure everyone got out safely. When I learned Earth was sending a representative to our Union ceremony, Carrion continued, I hoped it might be someone from your unit. To discover it as you yourself, and in full battle regalia, no less, feels like the blessing of the ancestors. About the armor, Your Highness, Williams interjected nervously. There was some confusion regarding the nature of the event. Carrion waved a hand dismissively. It is perfect. What better symbol could there be than a warrior who values honor above protocol? Orilla will be delighted. As if summoned by her name. Another figure entered the chamber, a woman with golden skin adorned with similar markings to Carrion's, though hers formed more intricate patterns. Her ceremonial garments flowed around her like liquid starlight. Is this her? She asked, approaching Alara with unhidden curiosity. The human soldier who saved you? Princess Orilla of the Stellaris Confederation, Carrion said by way of introduction. My soon-to-be bondmate. And yes, this is Lieutenant Alara Drake. Orilla circled Alara, studying her armor with open fascination. Remarkable. Is this standard Earth military equipment? Strategic combat armor, Alara confirmed. Standard for high-risk operations. And you wear it to our ceremony. Orilla's eyes sparkled with amusement. The conservatives in my father's court will be apoplectic. I apologize if it causes offense. Not at all. Orilla interrupted. It is refreshing to see such honesty in representation. Most diplomats arrive draped in borrowed symbolism they barely understand. You come as you are, a protector. The Chamberlain reappeared, looking slightly flustered. Your Highnesses, it is time. The guests are seated, and the crystal harmonics have begun. Indeed. Alara could now hear what sounded like music resonating through the structure itself. A haunting, beautiful melody that seemed to emanate from the crystal walls. Take your position, Lieutenant, Carrion instructed. When we enter the main chamber, you will walk 3 paces behind me, to my right. During the ceremony, stand at the same position beside the altar. Alara nodded, grateful for the clear instructions. As they prepared to enter the main chamber, her armor's threat assessment system pinged softly in her ear, a subtle warning that it had detected anomalous energy signatures in the gathering. Nothing immediately dangerous, but worth monitoring. She frowned slightly. Why would her combat systems be picking up unusual readings at a wedding ceremony? Before she could investigate further, the massive doors to the main chamber swung open, and the procession began. Alara took her position behind Prince Carrion, crystal sword held ceremonially across her chest as they had instructed. As they entered the vast space, the music swelled, and hundreds of guests rose to their feet. The chamber itself was breathtaking, a massive dome of interlocking crystal panels that captured and refracted light in constantly shifting patterns. At its center stood a raised dais, where a single, massive crystal formation rose from the floor, apparently the altar for the ceremony. Alara's combat instincts remained on high alert as they processed down the central aisle. Her armor's sensors continued to detect unusual energy signatures scattered throughout the chamber, but nothing that registered as an immediate threat. They reached the dais, and Alara took her position as instructed. From this vantage point, she had a clear view of the entire chamber and all its occupants. The guests represented dozens of species from across the Galactic Alliance, each adorned in what appeared to be their cultural finery. She spotted several humans in the gathering, most wearing the formal attire of the diplomatic corps. Their expressions ranged from confusion to horror at her armored presence in the ceremony. One woman in particular, wearing the insignia of Earth's ambassador, looked ready to have an aneurysm. Princess Orilla entered next, accompanied by her own ceremonial guards. The gathering rose again as she processed toward the altar, her golden skin almost luminous in the refracted light. As the ceremony began, conducted by an elderly Galivarian with elaborate facial markings, Alara divided her attention between the proceedings and her armor's ongoing threat assessment. The ritual itself was complex, involving exchanges of vows in multiple languages and the mixing of substances that produce spectacular reactions when combined. Throughout it all, her armor continued to register those anomalous energy signatures. They weren't weapons, at least not any weapons her systems recognized, but they were definitely technological in nature and seemed out of place in this ceremonial setting. The elderly officiant approached the central crystal formation and placed his hands upon it, causing it to illuminate from within. He spoke in the Galivarian language, his voice resonating throughout the chamber. The translation matrix in my armor rendered his words. Now comes the moment of truth, when the sacred crystal reveals the blessing or curse upon this union. Carrion and Aurela each placed a hand on the crystal, which glowed brighter at their touch. The officiant nodded in approval. The ancestors smile upon this union, he announced. Now, as tradition demands, the shield of honor must also touch the crystal, to symbolize the protection of this sacred bond. All eyes turned to Alara. Williams, standing among the Earth delegation, looked terrified. Clearly, this was a significant moment. Alara stepped forward and reached out with her armored hand. As her gauntlet made contact with the crystal, something unexpected happened. The crystal didn't merely glow. It erupted with brilliant light, sending prismatic beams shooting throughout the chamber. The gathered assembly gasped collectively. The officiant staggered back, his eyes wide. "The illumination of ages," he whispered, though Alara's audio enhancers caught the words clearly. "Not seen in 10 generations." A murmur swept through the gathering. Alara maintained her position, uncertain what had just occurred, but aware it was significant. From the assembled guests, a voice rang out. "Deception! The human uses technology to manipulate our sacred rituals." Alara's tactical systems immediately identified the speaker, a Galivarian male in ceremonial military attire, standing among a group that her threat assessment had already flagged. The accusation hung in the air. Alara remained still, hands still on the crystal, which continued to emit its spectacular light show. The Chamberlain stepped forward. "Commander Zareth, you dishonor yourself with such accusations. The human's equipment was scanned upon arrival, as per protocol." "Then scan it again," Zareth demanded. "No off-worlder has ever triggered the illumination. It must be technological interference." Prince Carrion raised a hand for silence. "If Lieutenant Drake is using technology to affect the crystal, a simple test will reveal it. Lieutenant, would you remove your gauntlet and touch the crystal with your bare hand?" Alara hesitated. Removing any part of her armor in a potentially hostile situation went against her training, but refusing would only validate the accusations. "Of course, Your Highness," she said, activating the release mechanism on her right gauntlet. The armor plates retracted, allowing her to slip her hand free. She reached out again and placed her bare palm against the crystal surface. If anything, the reaction intensified. The light grew brighter, and the crystal emitted a harmonic tone that resonated throughout the chamber. The officiant fell to his knees. "The voice of the ancestors," he intoned. "They speak through the crystal." Commander Zareth's face contorted with rage. "Impossible! This is some human trick!" He never finished his sentence. At that moment, Alara's threat assessment system blared a priority alert. Weapons had been activated somewhere in the chamber. Without hesitation, she re-engaged her gauntlet and moved to shield the royal couple. "Down!" she commanded, pushing both Carrion and Aurela behind the crystal altar as energy blasts erupted from multiple points in the chamber. Guests screamed and dove for cover as masked figures rose from among them, wielding energy weapons. Alara's combat systems went into full tactical mode, identifying 12 armed assailants converging on the altar. "Stay behind me," she instructed the royal couple, drawing her sidearm, a compact plasma pistol that had been concealed within her armor's utility compartment. She hadn't expected to need it, but years of experience had taught her to always be prepared. Her armor's tactical display highlighted the attackers' positions and projected their likely movements. 3 were already making their way up the side stairs to the dais. Alara took aim and fired 3 precise shots. The plasma bolts struck their targets with pinpoint accuracy, disabling their weapons without killing the attackers. She wasn't on a battlefield. These were criminals to be captured, not enemy combatants to be eliminated. "Lieutenant!" Carrion called out. "Behind you!" Alara spun to see Commander Zareth himself, ascending the rear stairs of the dais, an ancient-looking blade in his hand. Her armor's analysis indicated the weapon was ceremonial, but still lethal, a vibro edge capable of penetrating even military-grade protection. "The Union dies today," he snarled, lunging toward Princess Aurila. Alara intercepted the strike with the crystal sword she still held in her left hand. The ceremonial blade should have shattered against Zareth's weapon, but somehow it held, the crystal actually absorbing the energy from the vibro edge and pulsing with internal light. Taking advantage of Zareth's momentary surprise, Alara executed a perfect disarming maneuver, sending his blade clattering across the dais. A swift strike with her armored forearm rendered him unconscious. Throughout the chamber, security forces had begun to respond, engaging the remaining attackers. Alara maintained her protective position over the royal couple, her armor systems tracking all movement in the vicinity. Within minutes, the attack had been neutralized. Security personnel surrounded the dais, and medical teams attended to the few guests who had sustained injuries. None appeared life-threatening. Alara helped the royal couple to their feet. "Are you injured, Your Highnesses?" "We are unharmed, thanks to you," Carrion replied, his expression grim but composed. "It seems your battle armor was appropriate after all." Princess Aurila placed a hand on Alara's armored shoulder. "You have saved Carrion's life twice now, Lieutenant. The debt we owe you cannot be measured." The High Chancellor approached, visibly shaken. "Your Highnesses, are you well? This is unprecedented, an attack during a royal ceremony." "We are safe," Carrion assured him, "thanks to the human shield of honor." Security officers had surrounded the unconscious form of Commander Zareth. One of them knelt to examine him and called out in surprise, "High Chancellor, the commander bears the mark of the pure bloodline." Alara's translation matrix provided context. The pure bloodline was an extremist faction, opposed to any alliance with off-world species. They believed in Galivarian genetic and cultural superiority, and viewed the royal wedding as a corruption of their bloodline. The High Chancellor's expression hardened. "Secure all the attackers. We will uncover the full extent of this conspiracy." Turning to Alara, he bowed deeply. "Lieutenant Drake, you have performed the duty of Shield of Honor beyond any expectation. You have protected not just our prince and his bride, but the future of our alliance." The elderly officiant approached, his hands trembling slightly. "The ancestors spoke truly through the crystal. They sent us a warrior when we needed one most." He gestured to the crystal altar, which still pulsed with internal light. "The ceremony must continue. The blessing has been given, and not even violence can prevent this union." The guests were gradually returning to their seats, though many cast nervous glances toward the locations where the attackers had been subdued. Alara remained at her post as the ceremony resumed, her armor systems continuing to monitor for any further threats. The remainder of the ritual proceeded without incident, culminating in a spectacular display as Carrion and Aurila placed their hands together on the crystal altar one final time. The crystal's light encompassed them both, creating a luminous aura that slowly expanded to fill the entire chamber. As the ceremony concluded, and the newlywed couple processed out of the chamber, Alara followed in her designated position. The guests bowed as they passed, many now looking at Alara with expressions of awe rather than confusion. In an antechamber adjacent to the main hall, the royal couple paused to speak with Alara privately. "Lieutenant," Carrion began, "your presence today has transcended mere symbolism. You have become part of our history." "I was simply doing my duty, Your Highness," Alara replied. Orilla smiled. "A duty you performed admirably. But now we must ask something more of you." Alara tensed slightly. "What would that be, Your Highness?" "The attack today reveals that there are those who will go to extreme lengths to prevent our peoples from coming together," Carrion explained. "We need symbols of unity that transcend political maneuvering." "The crystal's response to you was unprecedented," Orilla continued. "In our combined cultures, it can only be interpreted one way. You have been chosen as a guardian of the Union." Alara frowned. "I'm not familiar with that term, Your Highness." "Few are," Carrion acknowledged. "It is an ancient position, not invoked in generations. A guardian stands as a living symbol of protection and serves as an advisor on matters of security and alliance." "It would require occasional ceremonial appearances," Orilla added. "But, more importantly, it would give you a voice in the Galactic Council when matters concerning Earth and our kingdoms are discussed." Alara was momentarily speechless. This was far beyond her mission parameters, beyond anything she had been prepared for. "Your Highnesses, I'm a soldier, not a diplomat," she said finally. "I'm not qualified for such a role." "On the contrary," Carrion replied, "you are perhaps the most qualified individual we could hope for. You understand duty and honor. You act decisively when needed. And most importantly, you have demonstrated that you value all lives equally." "The position is yours if you will accept it," Orilla said, "though we understand you may need to consult with your superiors." At that moment, a familiar figure entered the antechamber. Admiral Reeves himself, resplendent in full dress uniform. He was accompanied by the woman Alara had spotted earlier, wearing the Earth Ambassador's insignia. "That won't be necessary, Your Highnesses," Reeves said, bowing formally. "Lieutenant Drake has our full support to accept any position you offer." Alara stiffened to attention. "Admiral, I wasn't aware you were present." "I arrived shortly before the ceremony," Reeves replied, with a slight smile. "Ambassador Chen and I have been in discussions with the Galivarian Diplomatic Corps for some time regarding this potential arrangement." Ambassador Chen stepped forward. "Lieutenant, I must apologize for the unconventional nature of your briefing. We needed your genuine reaction to the situation, uncolored by diplomatic coaching." Alara's eyes narrowed. "You deliberately sent me into a high-profile diplomatic event without proper information?" "We sent the right person with exactly the information she needed," Reeves countered. "Had you arrived in diplomatic attire, rehearsed in protocol, you would have been just another interchangeable representative. Instead, you arrived as yourself, a soldier committed to protection and honor." "And nearly caused an interstellar incident," Alara pointed out. Ambassador Chen shook her head. "On the contrary, Lieutenant, your presence and, yes, your armor created the perfect conditions for the pure bloodline faction to reveal themselves. We've suspected infiltration at the highest levels for months, but lacked the catalyst to draw them out." "You used me as bait," Alara stated flatly. "We positioned you where you could do the most good," Reeves corrected. "And you performed admirably, as expected." Alara wanted to argue further, but was acutely aware of the royal couple's presence. This wasn't the time or place for a confrontation with her superior officer. "The position of guardian is yours if you wish it, Lieutenant," Carrion said, bringing the conversation back to the matter at hand. "It would not require you to leave Earth service. Indeed, it would formalize your role as a bridge between our peoples." Alara considered the offer. Despite the manipulation that had led her here, the position itself represented an unprecedented opportunity for Earth to gain influence in the Galactic Alliance. "I would be honored to accept, Your Highness," she said finally, "with the understanding that my primary duty remains to Earth." "Of course," Orilla agreed. "In fact, that dual loyalty is precisely what makes you ideal for the role." The High Chancellor entered, accompanied by the Royal Chamberlain. "Your Highnesses, the reception awaits. The guests are eager to celebrate your union and to honor the one who protected it." As they prepared to join the reception, Admiral Reeves moved closer to Alara. "Walk with me a moment, Lieutenant." They fell behind the others, creating a pocket of privacy. "You're angry," Reeves observed. "With respect, sir, you placed me in an impossible situation without adequate information. I placed you in a situation where your natural instincts would serve you better than any briefing," he countered. "Tell me, Lieutenant, if I had informed you that you were attending a royal wedding as Earth's representative, what would you have done?" Alara hesitated. "I would have researched Galivarian protocol, prepared appropriate remarks, and arrived as a pale imitation of a diplomat," Reeves finished. "Instead, you arrived as who you truly are, a soldier committed to protection. And in doing so, you connected with the Galivarians on a level no diplomat has managed in 80 years of relations." "It was a gamble, sir." "One that paid off spectacularly." Reeves smiled slightly. "The position of Guardian gives Earth a voice we've never had before, and it gives you an opportunity few soldiers ever receive, to prevent conflicts before they begin." Alara considered his words. "You could have simply asked me, sir. Would you have believed me if I'd told you that showing up to a royal wedding in full combat armor would result in a diplomatic breakthrough?" Despite herself, Alara smiled slightly. "Probably not, sir." "There you have it." Reeves gestured toward the reception hall. "Now, shall we join the celebration? I believe you're the guest of honor." The reception was held in a vast garden where crystal formations grew naturally among exotic flora. Illuminated paths wound through the space, leading to various gathering areas where guests mingled and celebrated. As Alara entered, conversation momentarily halted as all eyes turned toward her. Then, to her surprise, the assembled guests began to applaud. The sound echoed through the garden, accompanied by various alien expressions of approval and respect. Ambassador Chen appeared at her side. "Not exactly the diplomatic disaster I feared when I first saw you in that armor," she admitted. "Though I nearly had a heart attack." "That makes two of us, Ambassador," Alara replied dryly. "It's Dr. Chen, actually. I prefer my academic title in formal settings." "My apologies, Doctor." Throughout the evening, Alara found herself approached by representatives from dozens of worlds, all eager to meet the human who had protected the royal couple and been named Guardian. Many expressed surprise at finding a soldier so adept at the subtle art of conversation. "We had been led to believe that Earth's military personnel were, how shall I put this, somewhat lacking in social graces," one dignitary commented. "A common misconception," Alara replied smoothly. "We're trained to adapt to any situation, whether it involves plasma rifles or proper dinner etiquette." As the celebration continued, Alara noticed a familiar figure approaching, the quartermaster from the Concordia, now dressed in civilian attire. "Lieutenant," he greeted her with a grin. "Fancy meeting you here." Alara raised an eyebrow. "You're a long way from the armory, Chief." "Special assignment," he replied, tapping the side of his nose. "Someone had to make sure your armor was properly calibrated for the occasion." "You knew," Alara accused. "You knew exactly what I was walking into." The quartermaster shrugged. "I knew you were attending a royal wedding and might need to look intimidating. The assassination attempt and your elevation to mystical guardian status. That was all you." Before Alara could respond, a chime sounded throughout the garden, calling attention to the central area, where Prince Carrion and Princess Aurela stood on a raised platform. Friends, allies, honored guests, Carrion began, his voice carrying easily through the space. Today marks not just the union of two houses, but a new chapter in our shared history, Aurela continued. A chapter that began in danger, but has transformed into opportunity, thanks in no small part to the courage of one individual. They gestured toward Alara, and once again, all eyes turned to her. Lieutenant Alara Drake, Carrion announced. Please join us. Alara made her way through the crowd to the platform. Standing before the gathered dignitaries in her battle armor, she couldn't help but reflect on the strange path that had led her here. In accordance with ancient tradition, Carrion continued, we bestow upon Lieutenant Drake the title of Kavithnar Thalasso, Guardian of the Sacred Union. From this day forward, she shall stand as a living symbol of the bonds between our peoples and the strength that comes from unity in diversity. The High Chancellor stepped forward, bearing a small crystal similar to the one from the ceremony. He presented it to Alara with a formal bow. This fragment of the sacred crystal has been attuned to you, he explained. It will serve as your badge of office and will grant you access to the Galactic Council chambers when matters concerning our alliance are discussed. Alara accepted the crystal, which glowed softly at her touch. I am honored beyond words, she said, choosing her response carefully. I pledge to uphold the trust you have placed in me and to serve as a bridge between our worlds. The crowd erupted in applause once more. As the formal presentation concluded, Alara found herself approached by Admiral Reeves again. Congratulations, Guardian Drake, he said with a slight smile. It seems your first diplomatic mission has been an unqualified success. Despite the lack of proper briefing, Alara noted, though there was less edge to her tone now. Because of it, Reeves corrected. Sometimes the most effective path forward isn't the most obvious one. Speaking of which, Alara said, lowering her voice, was there actual intelligence about a potential attack? Or was my armor truly just a fortunate coincidence? Reeves's expression grew serious. We had indications of pure bloodline activity, but nothing concrete enough to justify security measures that might have been seen as an insult. Your presence provided a legitimate reason for enhanced protection without diplomatic fallout. So I was both a symbol and a security measure. Precisely. Reeves glanced around the garden. Earth has been fighting for greater influence in the Alliance for decades. Tonight, you've accomplished more than 100 diplomatic missions could have. As the evening progressed, Alara was introduced to numerous dignitaries and officials, many of whom expressed interest in establishing similar ceremonial positions for Earth representatives in their own cultural events. It seems you've started a trend, Lieutenant, Dr. Chen commented as they observed the gathering. We've received 7 preliminary inquiries about military representatives with ethical distinction for upcoming functions. Should I be concerned about becoming a diplomatic show pony? Alara asked wryly. Hardly, Chen replied. What these people saw today wasn't a performance. It was authenticity. That's something no amount of diplomatic training can manufacture. Later, as the celebration began to wind down, Alara found a moment of relative solitude near one of the garden's natural crystal formations. She was using the opportunity to run a diagnostic on her armor when Princess Aurela approached. Guardian Drake, she greeted with a warm smile. I hope you're finding the celebration agreeable. It's been illuminating, Your Highness, Alara replied, though I admit I'm still adjusting to my new title. It suits you well. Aurela gestured to the crystal formation beside them. Do you know what these formations represent in our culture? Alara shook her head. They are living records, capturing and preserving significant moments in time. Aurela placed her hand on the crystal, which responded with a soft glow. Today's events have already been recorded. Generations from now, Our descendants will be able to experience echoes of this union, and of your role in protecting it. The concept was both profound and slightly unnerving. I'm not sure I'm comfortable being part of someone else's historical record. Your Highness. Orilla laughed softly. Few who make history are comfortable with their place in it, Guardian. Yet here you stand, a soldier who arrived prepared for battle, and instead helped forge peace. Pure luck, Alara demurred. I think not, Orilla countered. Carrion and I have discussed this at length. We believe you were precisely the right person at the right moment, representing the best qualities of humanity without pretense. She touched the crystal fragment that now hung from a chain at Alara's waist. When the time comes for us to welcome our first child, we would be honored if you would stand as formal protector during the naming ceremony. Alara blinked in surprise. That's a significant request, Your Highness. Indeed it is, Orilla agreed. But having seen you in action, I can think of no one better suited to the role. Before Alara could formulate a response, Admiral Reeves approached. Forgive the interruption, Your Highness, but our transport will be departing shortly. Orilla nodded graciously. Of course, Admiral, Guardian Drake, we will speak more of this when the time comes. With a final smile, she returned to her husband's side. As they walked toward the landing platform where their shuttle waited, Reeves glanced at Alara. I couldn't help overhearing. A royal protectorship is quite an honor. Apparently showing up to a wedding in combat armor makes quite an impression, Alara replied dryly. Reeves chuckled. Indeed it does. Though I suspect it was your actions, rather than your attire, that truly won them over. They reached the shuttle, where several other Earth representatives were already boarding. Williams, the attaché who had been so horrified by Alara's armor initially, approached with an expression of bemused respect. Lieutenant, or should I say Guardian, I owe you an apology, he said. I was certain your appearance would cause a diplomatic incident. Instead, you've elevated Earth's standing considerably. Sometimes the right approach isn't the obvious one, Alara replied, echoing Reeves's earlier words. As they boarded the shuttle and prepared for departure, Alara gazed out at the crystalline landscape of Galaveris. What had begun as a confusing, potentially disastrous assignment had transformed into something she could never have anticipated. The shuttle lifted off, carrying them back toward the Concordia. As the planet receded below them, Reeves settled into the seat beside her. So, Lieutenant, he said conversationally, what have you learned from this experience? Alara considered the question carefully. That appearances can be deceiving. That sometimes the most diplomatic approach is the least diplomatic one. And, she added with a slight smile, that next time I'm sent on a mission, I should request a complete briefing. Reeves laughed. Would you have believed me if I'd told you to wear combat armor to a royal wedding, because it would result in you becoming a cultural icon and interstellar guardian? Probably not, sir. Exactly my point. He leaned back in his seat. Some lessons can't be taught. They have to be experienced. As the shuttle docked with the Concordia, Alara received a notification on her personal terminal, a formal communication from Earth Command. Opening it, she found a new assignment. She was to head a specialized unit focused on proactive diplomatic security measures across the Alliance. Your idea, sir? She asked, showing the order to Reeves. The position was created at the request of 7 Alliance species, he replied. Apparently, they were impressed by your honest representation of human values and requested similar attachés for their own diplomatic functions. Alara shook her head in disbelief. All because I wore battle armor to a wedding. All because you were yourself, Reeves corrected. In a galaxy full of carefully crafted diplomatic personas, authenticity stands out. As they disembarked, the quartermaster was waiting in the docking bay. Welcome back, Lieutenant. Or should I say Guardian. How did the armor perform? Flawlessly, Alara replied. Though I'd appreciate a heads up next time you're part of an elaborate scheme to turn me into an interstellar diplomat. The man grinned. Where would be the fun in that? Besides, the look on your face when you realized you were attending a wedding in full combat gear must have been priceless. Despite herself, Alara smiled. Just remember, Chief, payback is a concept that transcends cultural boundaries. Later, alone in her quarters, Alara examined the crystal fragment she had been given. It pulsed with a soft inner light, responding to her touch in a way that defied technological explanation. Her terminal chimed with an incoming message, a formal invitation to serve as honor guard at 3 additional Alliance ceremonies over the coming year. It seemed her new role as Guardian would keep her busy. She thought back to the sparse mission brief that had started it all. Represent Earth at the Gallivarian ceremonial gathering. Do not allow yourself to be undermined. Well, she had certainly accomplished that, though not in any way she could have anticipated. With a quiet laugh, Alara composed a message to Admiral Reeves. Mission accomplished, sir. Next time, perhaps mention if the ceremonial gathering involves a wedding. Battle armor makes for awkward dancing. She sent the message, then began preparing for her next assignment, Guardian of the Sacred Union. It wasn't a title she had ever aspired to, but perhaps it was one she had been prepared for all along. As she stored her armor in its maintenance rack, she couldn't help but wonder what other diplomatic functions might benefit from her particular brand of authenticity. Whatever came next, she would face it as she always had, ready for anything, even if that meant attending a royal baptism in full combat gear. After all, sometimes the most effective diplomacy came not from saying the right things, but from being willing to fight for what mattered. And that was something Alara Drake understood perfectly.